Anyone else? Yeah, Donna.
It was only 5.1.
Oh, okay.
So is that below Creed?
Yeah, that's a very good number.
Yeah.
That's a very good number. That almost sounds like optimism.
Yeah.
That's one word I would use to describe that picture, optimism. You have that plant growing in the middle of nowhere. Did anyone else want to give a description of it?
That's pretty much Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I have some questions I want to ask you. Place yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for the following. I believe my mental attitude has more power over my long-term health than my genetic code does. And here it is. Number 1, it's almost entirely genetics and environment. Or 10, my mindset is the primary driver of my physical outcome. So scale from 1 to 10, and we won't want to delay too long. What I would say is it's toward the 10. The reason I'm saying that is the wisest man who lived on the face of the earth wrote this, but he got it from God. A man's spirit sustains him in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? Now, doesn't that sound like an attitude, a chosen attitude that a person has? It sustains them through sickness. So here's another one.
No, wait, I wanted to take a picture.
Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. Think of a minor irritation or frustration that you had in the last 24 hours. Maybe a traffic jam, spilled coffee, or a slow computer. Now you can describe it as, of course, this happened to me. Today is ruined. Can you imagine spilling a cup of coffee? Now, if it got on my computer, I might say that, but that doesn't look like that happened. Or, this is annoying, but it gives me 5 minutes to listen to my favorite, and this is in a traffic jam, to listen to my favorite song, or to get up and get another cup of fresh coffee. Which one is it for you? The fresh coffee?
It could have been worse.
It could have been
Worse.
Yeah, it could have been worse.
You landed on it. You didn't get on the keyboard.
That's right. That's right. So here's another one. No, hold it. I already asked that question. I didn't put it up on the screen though. Okay, here's another one. If you were a weather forecast for your own life, what is your default setting? Are you sunny with a chance of clouds or cloudy with occasional clearings? Now, how much effort does it take for you to change that forecast? Are you actually sunny with a chance of clouds or cloudy with occasional clearings? We're all sunny, aren't we? Yeah. That's optimism. Here we go. When I am ill, am I the type of person who stays focused on the steps I can take to get better? Now, here's an idea. It's high self-sufficiency. It suggests that the person views recovery as a result of their own actions. Now, Donna, one time you said that you had a higher number. So you've done something right. Yeah. Here's another one. When I get sick, do I find myself thinking, here we go again, my body is just weak? And you could say that's pessimism. It views illness as a permanent character flaw rather than a temporary external event. And here's another one. Do I feel that no matter what I do, my health is mostly a matter of good or bad luck? Now, pessimism, it removes personal action, replaces it with chance. That's what luck is. But I've also heard it said that luck is living under correct knowledge. That's a good acronym for luck. But here is a guy now that I guess you could say he had bad luck. Has anyone heard of Jim Stovall? Jim Stovall. Anyone here? You guys haven't heard of Jim Stovall? He was a graduate in 1976 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Of course, I graduated in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1972. But he was in 1976, Jim faced a devastating diagnosis with a rare eye disease. The discovery during a routine checkup before he entered college eventually led to his blindness. Okay? As a teenager with his entire life ahead of him, it was what he called indescribable devastation. Now remember, he's just entering college. Okay? How did he cope with the severe loss of his eyesight? Did he give up on life? The answer is no. He did not give up on life. By the way, I've got that story in this little book here. 7 biblical ways for healthy living. I'd give it to you for $5 if you want it. But there's many good stories in there. And this is one of them. Now, he went on to become a national champion Olympic weightlifter. How good eyesight do you need to lift weights? He didn't think you did. And he became a champion Olympic weightlifter. An Emmy Award winner, the president of a television network, one of the 10 outstanding young Americans, and the National Entrepreneur of the Year. But most important than those personal achievements was his skill as an encouraging author. Now, has anyone seen this movie called The Ultimate Gift? Everyone raise your hand who's seen it. Yeah, Lucas, you've seen it. Debbie's seen it. We're the only fans of Jim Stovall. I want you to get that movie. It's available at Amazon, The Ultimate Gift. And it's a fantastic movie. Huh?
A little bit about it. Maybe we've seen it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, James Gardner is the grandfather. He's got a big family. He's got a grandson that he thinks is the most responsible of the whole family. But not. He needs to be more responsible. And he's going to give him some gifts. The gifts of hard work. The gift of planning. The gift of gratitude. The gift of love. All those kind of things. It's the idea you're not what you have, but what you be. What do you have as characteristics? You know, I think Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 described love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, all that kind of thing. Love is patient, love is kind. That's what you are, not what you have. You can have a big, gigantic mansion and what? Not have any love or kindness. Self-centered. But he was going blind, and I want you to listen to this. Now, you may have to turn this volume up here, Lucas. I want you to listen to the story that he tells about himself years ago, and let's see what we find from it.
I just wanted to wander around there, kind of thinking about why this diagnosis. And two things happened to me that day that I still look back on today that have pretty much changed me. One was there was an exhibition there from the Olympic team, the weightlifters. I thought back over that, really couldn't see well at all. And I had trained a lot in my work with football, so I did that, and 3 years later I was a national champion. That was one inspiration. The other one was I was wandering down the Midway, and there was a big pavilion, a big arena, and it said free concert. And the free really fit my budget at that time. And I went in, and I had no idea who was playing. I had no idea what was happening. And I had no idea when the concert was going to start. There was no one there. I went and sat on the front row and just thought about this whole blindness thing closing in on me, what I was going to do with my life. And without noticing it, really, the arena filled up around me. And the next thing, it kind of broke me out of that reverie was a gentleman saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, please well, really just blew these people away for 2 hours. And then 10 years later, I was working for a speaking promoter. I was working in Madison Square Garden. And the event went really well. And he said, will you stay over and do that again next Saturday? I'll either fly you home and back or you can stay in town. And I said, I'll stay in town. I got stuff to do. He said, I got another act in town at Carnegie Hall Tuesday night. You want to go? And I almost said no, but I said, who you got? And he said, Ray Charles. So I sat on the front row again. And afterwards I went back and I met Ray. And the promoter said, you'll have to wait a second because Ray's still signing autographs. Well, I had gone blind by this time. And I didn't know you could write. And I said, well, how does he write? And Ray said, who said that? And I said, my name is Jim Stovall. He said, son, if anybody ever thinks enough of you in your life that wants you to sign your name, the least you can do is figure out how to do it. And Ray showed me how to sign it. And then it was 10 years later, just 5, 6 years ago, one of Ray's last concerts was here in Tulsa at the Performing Arts Center. And I went, I said, I'm from Philly. Hadn't seen Ray in probably 10 years. And I went backstage and I was talking to somebody, and he heard me. He hadn't heard me in probably 10 years. He said, boy, you better get ready to sign something. And they handed me a photo of Ray, and I signed to Ray, Jim Stovall. And I don't know who got that. I'd give $1 million for that photo, man.
Okay. Everyone knows Ray Charles, right? But here's the idea behind all of this. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Now, some of you don't have diabetes who are here, but I'm thankful for your presence and for your support in coming. And you're refreshing me, and hopefully you're refreshing others who are here. And I want you to remember a time when you felt grateful for something that someone did for you. Just think of a time like that. Remember a time when you felt grateful for something that someone did for you. And a little bit later in this lesson, I'll give you an opportunity to share a story if you want to, okay, about that. And I'll put the slide back up on the screen again. But the first thing I want us to do is this idea of well-being. Now, some of you have seen this before. Don't say what it is if you've seen it. Let's let the others who haven't seen it tell us what it is. Okay, what is it? The two ladies from Edmond, from Edmond, who are Okies. Now, what do you think it is? Don't know. I don't know what a don't know is either, but. Huh?
It's white and it's in the shape of what?
Yeah. Well, it's in the shape of this. That's our dog Ruff. And he lived to be 15. We took him on walks every day. And but you see, when you look at that, we can focus just on our problems and get zeroed in, have tunnel vision on our problems. If we don't see the whole big expanse, we can't see the wonderful face of the dog. But I think that is what gratitude does for us. And optimism, we get to see everything that way. You know, one of the things that happened to me when I was young, I was able to get some sugar-free pop. And when I first got it and took my first sip of it, you see what that guy's doing, smuckering his lips there? Well, that's what Tab was to me. Does any of you remember Tab? That was a wonderful soft drink, wasn't it? Nothing compared to what they have now. But anyway, in 1960, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So I was about 7 years old when I was diagnosed. I just turned 7. And we went back, Debbie and I went back there to Canyon City, Colorado this last summer to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. And we went to Canyon City. And one of the things in Canyon City was I wanted to find that hospital. Well, this is picture that was taken in the 1950s, and it was the hospital there from 1938 to 1960. I was there in 1960, see, and then they moved. But I understood now that it had been turned into an apartment complex, just rooms for rent there. I looked at the wrong place. I never did find it. We didn't go down Macon Street, and I missed out on it. But one of the things that happened to me when I was there, I received a book from probably one of the leading diabetologists at the time. He wrote this book in 1958, and I still have a copy of it. That's my copy right there. You can kind of see it's old. But anyway, one of the things that he wrote in the book of how to check your blood sugar was this. All of these different ways. The way I used was test tape. And that's just a urine sample. That's not current. It's not like pricking your finger and checking your blood sugar on a meter now. You can get that instantly. That's what you are right then. But of course, urine is a collection. And so that's not current. But one of the things that you could see if you were elevated, you could tell where you were. The test tape turned colors. And it would turn, if it was dark green, that meant you were like 240 and above. It didn't tell you where you were, just 240 or above. You could have been 300 or more there. And that, as I was growing up, sometimes the youth group, they would have pizza on a Sunday evening. Do you remember that, Tom? We'd meet together as a group and have pizza.
Where?
Oh, I don't know. I remember at someone's house. I guess I just remember one time, and I don't even know if you were there for that time. But it seemed like I did it more than once. And I'd wake up the next day, and I felt miserable. And I didn't want to go to school anyway. I said, Mom, I just don't feel good. You know, I thought I was play acting, but I think I really was sick there. And if I had checked my blood sugar, I'd probably have been the dark green there. But here is an attitude, a gratitude awareness test I want you to take. And it's a good one for those of us who can see. So you're going to have to be patient here, Daryl and Don. But here we go.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
There you go. You know, what are your awareness skills? Here we were walking this morning with our dog. It's another Boston Terrier. And Debbie says, hey, look over there. I can see the goose. Right over there. And I look. Yeah, I finally saw it. But she's very observant. I'm not that observant. But it really helps whenever you look for the good things that happen in your life, and then you can be thankful for them. It's easy for us to, you know, we're like Velcro when it comes to problems. And whenever it comes to gratitude, more like Teflon. But here's a good picture that when it gets dark enough, you can see the stars. Now the stars are always there, aren't they? And good things are always there in our life if we look for them and think about them. So look on the brighter side of life each day. A cheerful look brings joy to your heart, and good news gives health to your body. You see, Solomon wrote that. Good news gives health to your body there. So here's several things I want us to go over. Research benefits is where we're going to start. And then resources, few, and now today we have many. And then the routine that we need to have, the habit, is the habit of gratitude. And so here was research that was done at Cal State University, Cal Davis University out in California by Robert Emmons. He had 1,000 participants in this study, randomly assigned them to 4 conditioned groups. One was this, and it was a 10-week study, and then they were going to analyze how their well-being was at the end. And so they were to count, this is one group, count your blessings, your gratitude, that's the gratitude condition group. You reflect back on the previous week, come up with 5 things that you can jot down, and then you could meditate about it, thank God for them, or whatever. But the other group was this, and this is what I really want you to focus on for the previous week at what happened to you. It was called the Count Your Burdens group. And then the third one is just a mixture. You can come up with a mixture. 2 of the positive, of gratitude, 3 of the negative, or I don't know how people came out with that. It probably tend to be the problems more so than the good things, the blessings. But here's what happened after the I don't know what the test was and how they determined this, but the results were this. The gratitude group felt better about their lives, they were more optimistic, and they exercised more. Does it sound like that's beneficial to people with diabetes? Or people without diabetes who just need to exercise more? And a second daily study led to greater gratitude increases than the weekly practice. And so, is a grateful heart a healthier heart? There was research done at the University of Pittsburgh. They had 119 heart transplants, and they put these people into this practice of gratitude, and guess what? Thankfulness also predicted better compliance with a meal plan and medications that they had to be on. So, the idea is thanks, gratitude, appreciation. And as I mentioned before, someone said that our minds are like Velcro for negative information, but like Teflon for positive. We can accumulate. Can you tell me a couple of good things or a couple of bad things that happened to you today? I mean, it's easy to come up with it, but a couple of good things might be more difficult. But here is the results. This is information that was received from scientific research done at the University of Cal Davis, at Indiana University, the University of Miami, Pittsburgh, University of Pennsylvania. Did I mention one of the Carolinas? I didn't, did I, Jim? Because they weren't on the list, but I should have. But anyway, here are the benefits that they found from all of this. You're more optimistic. You feel more connected with others. You sleep better. That's very valuable. You're more compliant to taking your medicine and meal plans and all that, and exercising more also. And it reduces cortisol, which can cause elevated stress there. So gratitude has a lot of benefits, doesn't it? So here we go. We want to look at the resources, few versus many. I want to give you a story of someone that goes way back to can you read that? That's November 1914. It was about Thanksgiving time in 1914, and this family was having their Thanksgiving meal, and their son was 14, and he was going to be 15 in just shortly. I don't know what his birthday exactly was, but I know he was almost 15. He was diagnosed with, at that time, they called it juvenile diabetes. Now, in 1914, if you remember anything about insulin, it was not discovered until 1921. This is 1914, okay? And so During the next 7.5 years, planning was necessary to just keep him alive. The idea of planning, of deciding ahead of time what to do, was followed by his mother meticulously in the food that she gave him. And she gave him very little. The most was about 820 calories a day. And so he started in 1914, he was almost 15, and he was about 97 pounds. Remember that story about the 97-pound weakling? Did anyone ever remember? Anyway, I remember seeing that on the back of a comic book or something. 97-pound weakling. But anyway, by the time he got his first dose of insulin, he was fortunate. 7.5 years later, on what could be called an undernutrition meal plan, a starvation plan, just to keep him alive, to keep him from spilling sugar into his urine. That was the goal, to try to keep that from happening. He lived longer than anyone else on this plan by Dr. Frederick Allen there. And of course, in 1963, Reader's Digest had a condensed story about James Havens, the first American to receive insulin. The first American. And you can kind of see the doctors had abandoned hope, but this father knew that someone, somewhere, could keep his son from dying. The help he found in Toronto marked a dramatic turning point in medical history. And so here he is. Yeah.
Is this story in your book?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it's in the book. But hey, thank you. You must have been reading. That's good. Okay, so anyway, he is going to a doctor, Dr. Williams, John Williams. And his father worked at Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, New York. And there was someone that came from Canada, the Toronto area, I think it was. And he said, I've been looking, trying to find someone who has some remedy for my son. And he knew he was about to pass away. And so he said, when I get back home, I'm going to look, I'm going to ask everyone I can. And sure enough, he received a message from him that there are a couple of fellows at Toronto University who have discovered something. And it's Frederick Banting and Charles Best. They were the ones that found it. So this man began to ask and ask, eventually discovering about Dr. Banting and his assistant Charles Best. And he made an important discovery of the University of Toronto, and of course it was insulin. And so Dr. Williams sent a message to Dr. Banting about the insulin, and he did receive some of it. It wasn't refined like it is today, and nothing like it is today, really. But he received it, and he tried to give him some doses. It didn't really work. Sent the message back, this stuff doesn't work. Well, Dr. Banting came himself, and they gave him doses every 2 hours, and they checked his blood sugar, the urine test. And eventually, after a few hours, there was no sugar there. So they could see something is working here. And it was amazing. So sometime later, James wrote to Dr. Banting, the discoverer of insulin, a week ago last Thursday marked an historical event as I then tasted my first egg and toast. Egg on toast is my idea of the only food necessary in heaven. That was wonderful. So a cheerful look brings joy to your heart, and good news gives health to your body. Now, when we think about it, what did he have available for him back in 1914? He had a starvation diet. That was it. Now, was he going to get up and exercise a lot? No. That was it. There was no medication, there was no insulin, nothing. And so how does that compare with what we have today? That was few resources. Now we have a lot of resources, don't we? Can you name any? Insulin, for one thing, and all these oral medications or other things. The way we check our blood sugar, continuous glucose monitoring system, and I'm 170. Okay, man, you guys are stressing me out. But anyway, we have that. We didn't have that before. I got my first, well, I'll show it to you here in a second. My first glucometer in 1981. First time I could check my blood sugar after having diabetes for 21 years. And I think it caused problems for me not to be able to check my blood sugar. But anyway, he was able to become an artist. And I didn't know anyone could make money out of being an artist, but he could. James Havens could. He got married, had a couple of kids, or his wife did. They did. But now he got his first shot of insulin in 1922, but he died in 1960. 38 years on insulin. But did you know that he didn't die of diabetes? He died of colon cancer. That was it. So anyway, the discovery of insulin has saved millions of lives, and I've lived for more than 65 years because of the discovery of insulin. And here's just a brief little outline of it that we'll look at.
Long way to give patients more control over their own management and delivery systems have dramatically improved. Thinner needles, disposable syringes, pens, pumps, and more. But the power of the insulin story is most evident in the children whose lives it saved. Elizabeth Hughes lived until 1982 and became a wife, mother, and grandmother. Bob Cleveland's older brother Gerald lived to age 93, surviving over 75 years with diabetes thanks to the miracle of insulin. And nearly 90 years after Fred Banting conceived of a crazy idea, Bob Cleveland stands as a shining example of the power of this discovery and the millions of lives it has saved.
I've been on insulin for 35 years, 26 years, 13 years now.
12 and a half, 8 years, 7 years, a year and 2 weeks.
To think of a condition that prior to the discovery of insulin was completely untreatable, that patients died because of the lack of being able to receive insulin, is inconceivable today.
But insulin is like my best friend.
It's a love-hate relationship.
The reality is when I take insulin, I'm not different anymore. And this is what insulin allows me to do. It allows me as a type 2 diabetic to be normal.
Insulin technically is a chemical that allows you kind of use what you're eating for energy, but without insulin, you couldn't survive. It's a stage of the development of treating diabetes. Not the final stage, it's not the first stage, but it's where we are.
We'll be right back.
So we never know what wonderful results will appear when we persevere with patience and planning. Those are really principles from God that we can use. Now here's a person called Sir Lancelot because he's always checking his blood glucose. Before I ever got a continuous glucose monitor system, the first time I got it was in 2013. And it was by MiniMed, and it wasn't that good. Really wasn't that good. But I would check my blood sugar up to 12 times a day. But I didn't get a real trend, but I checked myself 12 times there. Now, you can check yourself, and you get the results in 5 or 6 seconds. That's it. Sometimes people need reminders. Here is my first insulin, my glucose meter, right there. And you can see that there's different little stages here. There's a Mark 1, Mark 2. Well, the idea is that you would prick your finger, get a big drop of blood to put on a stick, and it soaked into the stick. And then you would hit the button, and it would count down for 1 minute. And then you would go over to the sink with a high pressure bottle of water, and you would spray out the excess blood, and then you would put it in the meter, and you would hit the mark again for another minute. It took over 2 minutes to get a blood sugar result, and now you can do it in how long? 5 seconds or 6 seconds. But even better, you can use a continuous glucose monitoring system there. Most of us can. I think you have to be on insulin to have it. I'm not for sure, maybe not. But
there are systems out there. There's some that are expensive to buy personally. So like if you're on Medicare, you have to be insulin dependent.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Now, one of the things about these continuous glucose monitoring systems, I've got one. I think Daryl, do you have one? You got and Don has one. Is anyone else here got a continuous glucose monitoring system there? Okay. Anyway, but the thing you've got to know is that whenever you look at the meter, and if it says like mine, I keep going up. I'm 175 with an arrow going up, and it's going directly up, not slanted, going up. That means I'm higher than that right now. It's a trend that you're following. You always have to remember the trends. So I want to give you a little video about this. Now, some of us just listen to this and how it works.
Most of the time, glucose levels in the ISF and the whole blood are similar. However, when the glucose is changing rapidly, such as after meals, after insulin, or after exercise, the glucose level in the whole blood is not the same as glucose in the ISF. This difference in the rate of change is known as the lag. A train is a good way to illustrate this concept of lag. Think of blood glucose and ISF glucose as the cars of a train. In the front car of the train is blood glucose, or BG. In the back of the train is the ISF, or sensor glucose, SG. Imagine that the hills and bumps on the track are like the changes in your glucose levels throughout a typical day. In the front car of the train is blood glucose, or BG. As carbohydrate is digested, glucose enters the bloodstream first, before it is absorbed into the interstitial fluid. So blood glucose is in the front of the train. In the back of the train is the sensor glucose, or SG car. Since glucose travels from the blood into the interstitial fluid, sensor glucose follows behind blood glucose. When the train is traveling along a flat plane, when there is little fluctuation in glucose levels, the blood glucose and sensor glucose readings will be very similar, although rarely exactly the same. Now think of going uphill on the train as a rise or upward trend in glucose levels. As the train starts up the hill, you can see that the blood glucose in the front car is leading the sensor glucose in the back car, because changes in glucose appear first in blood glucose. Now as the train heads down the hill, or glucose is decreasing or trending down, once again, the blood glucose leads in the front car. So as you can see, whether glucose levels are trending up or trending down, blood glucose leads sensor glucose. There will be a bigger difference in blood glucose and sensor glucose readings on the bigger hills, or when glucose is changing more rapidly, after food, after insulin, and after exercise. There are a couple of important things to keep in mind. When glucose levels are generally stable, expect to see small differences in blood glucose and sensor glucose. However, when the glucose level is changing rapidly, expect to see bigger differences between the blood glucose and sensor glucose readings. It's important to note that with CGM, the focus is not only on the glucose reading at any single point in time, but also on the trend.
the trend is very important. I was so used, checking myself up to 12 times a day. And then I started using the continuous glucose monitoring system. I've got a good one now. It's my Abbott there. And it works great. But I still have that tendency to forget about the trends and just think about where the blood sugar is, just like I'm checking my finger there. But if there's an arrow that says you're in a trend and you're on your way up or down, whatever it might be. So anyway, the routine. Let me give you this quickly. We've still got 8 minutes. Wow. But let's look at the present. Now, the principle of gratitude has been lost in recent published books and articles for diabetes management. But way back in 1942, Dr. Elliot Jocelyn advocated to his patients to be cheerful and also be thankful that his disease is not of a hopeless character, but a disease which his brains will help him conquer. And so John, a patient of Dr. Elliot Jocelyn, was going blind in his late 30s, and yet he wrote in 1959 this: "Yet I hasten to add, I have been grateful for every day of life I have had since first becoming a diabetic." When he was 15. He's about 39 now. "I've always regarded each day as a sort of bonus." Well, I can imagine, being put back into James Haven's time. If I were in that condition, wow, that would have been a struggle. And to survive would have been something. But we all need to consider where we are and what we're doing, what we can do. It's kind of a bonus. And we need to thank God for each day that we have. And here are some guys that went to a camp about in 1959. And some of these guys, I don't know if does that guy look 7? That was my age. I don't know, they may be 9 or 10 or something. But that's about what I was back then. And these guys are cheerful. And let it be known, they all have type 1 diabetes in this picture. They all do. So you're not rare. Now, it used to be, there's more people being diagnosed with type 1, and of course there's many, many with type 2 today, but it was rarer back years ago. Growing up, going through school, in all the years, the 12 years, I can remember one other person I met with type 1 diabetes. That was it. But now there are more. I think there's several right here in this church. So, here's a little practice we can take. Name 5 good things or tasks that have happened to you since you left your home for this meeting today. Can anyone name one? Donna?
I found out my real number was low enough.
There you go. Yeah.
And I brought my water.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's good. Anyone else? Let me help you. How did you get here? Now, if you live quite a distance and you drove, well, that's good. But if you walked, that's good too, isn't it? Can you hear what I'm saying? Okay. Are you by yourself now? I don't know how many we have here, but this is a good group, especially since Sandy brought her family. That really boosted attendance tonight. And then, are you currently with others who want to outsmart diabetes and live well? We're all here together, aren't we? So one of the things that we can look at the past, 5 things. This is one thing that you can do. You can jot this down when you go to bed tonight. 5 good things that have happened to you today that you can be thankful for. And you can jot them down, and then give thanks to God for them. Or do it first thing in the morning. Just reflect back on it. And keep your list of gifts or blessings varied. Now here's one guy who he was part of the group down in the Norman area. And Randy would come every time we would meet. And he was such an encourager. But he ended up on kidney dialysis. So he'd have to go in for the dialysis each week several times. And it was a struggle. And he also had problems with neuropathy and had to go through some surgery and was laid up at a rehabilitation center for quite a while. And he started practicing gratitude. He would jot down things. I don't know if he did it in the morning or the evening, but he would jot down 5 things and he would think about them and pray about them. And man, his attitude changed. He did have an accident that took place after 2 years of dialysis. He bled to death. Did his funeral several years ago. But I really miss Randy. So, the wisdom skill. What in the world do I have to be thankful about? I've got diabetes and I'm worried about so many other things. Now, do you notice that that's not connected with the wisdom circle? That's not wisdom. That kind of thinking. Here's the kind of thinking that we need to have. Good news brings health to the body. So focus on the good news. It is what's healthy for us. And here's another thing. The past worth remembering. Now, several years ago, we lived we moved up to the Kansas City area, and we went to Watkins Mill. It was a state park, and we're walking out there with one of our boys wasn't even a year old, and the other one wasn't, he might have been 3 years old. I'm talking about Lucas back there. So we're out there walking, and all of a sudden I see a drop in my right eye. And there was another drop. And I started having blurry vision like that. And it continued. And by the time I said, Debbie, we've got to go home. And by the time we turned around and we went, I got back to the car, I could not even see in my right eye. And so I was having a hemorrhage, and it was a hemorrhage from my retina, the back of the eye, which is very common among people with diabetes. If they don't take care of themselves, well, now remember, I got my first glucose meter in 1981. This happened in